CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. All right, everybody, welcome back to CMMS Radio. We are joined once again by William Sloan. He is with Eruditio. You've seen him on CMMS Radio in the past a couple of times. William, thanks for joining me again today.
Greg, I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to this episode. Glad to be with you again. It's been too long.
Absolutely been too long. And, you know, I think I'm going to see you later in Chicago this year at Reliable Plant. I don't know if that's been decided yet, but last year we hung out, talked about some things. And one of the first things I want to hit you with out of the gate today is, you know, you're a real true specialist when it comes to MRO, the storeroom operations. And I always want to ask someone like you, a real expert, how can people look at MRO and the CMMS, and how can those things, without calling out any products, potentially play nice together? What are they missing? What could they do? And how can it really benefit their organization as a whole?
Well, Greg, I think the biggest benefit that MRO can have with CMS is actually having your inventory in a CMMS system. I mean, it just allows so many avenues for people to go into a work order, attach parts to that work order, run it through the storeroom where it's issued out through the storeroom, and it just streamlines the processes so much more efficiently than the way a lot of people play that game today, where it's just not married to each other. Or, a lot of times there's a CMMS system and there's an inventory system that lives outside that CMMS system. And now you're having to work in two systems, to get parts and for each other to play nice just so you can get a work order completed.
Dude, and I mean, I think we've all seen that, whether you're at a CMMS provider, you're out here bringing, reliability and maintenance best practices to organizations, or if you're actually the end user, the people on the floor, dancing between two systems is very disruptive, even though if they do it, it could be impactful. So when we do that in a single system that has that available, and you can really stay on the fly and get your parts, pull your spares, whatever it might be, and it's all being documented in the work orders, it's pulling from the inventory in real time. Where do you see that making the bigger impact for both the organization? And I also want to hear a little something, if you would, on how that actually reduces waste and contributes to efficiency.
Well, I think the biggest thing is a lot of CMS systems don't have that functionality turned on. It's already in that CMMS system, right? If I turn on the reservation functionality in that system, I could use that. If I turn on that inventory, function in that system, it could be used. And sadly, Greg, a lot of companies are paying for that and not utilizing that function. Yeah. So you can just imagine the efficiency gained by having all that in one system where, I can get the parts in there. It's all able to be looked up. It's all able to be inventoried. It can be received in those processes into that one system. And they all look at themselves together as one. I call it one big team, right? One big team where they all work together, and all that lies in one system than outside the walls of two separate systems, like you said.
So that kind of features breaking down silos. It gives you better quality of data as what I'm talking about there is like contextually, because those things are so closely related. Now your data is better. It's useful because you can tie the various maintenance activities to the consumables being used or spares being pulled out, put in, decommissioning, all those types of things. Do you think it's more common for organizations that are implementing these best practices, they tend to overcomplicate it and they make it harder than it really is?
I think they do. I think they look for a secret sauce. I think they look for an easy way. I think they listen to somebody that just comes in and says, this is the way you need to do things. And I think a lot of times in that organization, it's somebody that's not really involved in the day-to-day maintenance and inventory systems, making that call. It may be based on cost, maybe based on things like that, and don't truly understand what the end user's, looking at. I mean, you think about a maintenance technician trying to find a part. It would be great if they could just find it inside the CMMS system and don't have to go into a separate system to try to find the part. It'd be great inside that CMMS system that all those parts are tied to bill of materials that's tied to an asset and gives that technician so much more an efficient way to find things. But I think a lot of times, and we were just talking about this today, is having the right people in the room. And a lot of time, the right people are not in the room when that CMMS system is being selected, whether it be missing the technician, missing somebody from MRO. It's usually somebody on the operations side or somebody controlling purse strings that says, no, we need to do this because of this. Or it's because somebody's gotten in the ear and said, Greg, I really need you to go with this system. And that's what leads to those problems, is not having that right focus team or group that's available when selecting that CMMS system. And just like we're dealing with, I was talking to you about earlier today, a lot of that functionality is turned off, and it could be turned back on and make the world a whole lot easier because they're already paying for a lot of those components of that CMMS system. And it's sad to know that it's not being used, and it could really have some efficiency gains, if those components were just turned on.
Absolutely. It's far too common. And then at the same time, everybody's busy doing what they do. A lot of times the environments are at least partially reactive, and they want to do things better, but they almost can't because things are in their way. So some of the things you're talking about, you've got maybe leadership that parachutes in and says, well, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and they don't really know. They might even have the best of intentions, right? Which
right.
Oftentimes we would love it if they could just, move from behind that desk or out of that boardroom or meeting room and get out there on the floor and kind of observe and see what's going on. And then for everyone, because I want to be fair here, I don't want to just tell people they're doing it wrong. That doesn't help anybody. That's kind of that
correct.
blame.
That's
that
correct.
blame game
Right.
is like, we need to just say, okay, yeah, somebody might have not done something, whatever we're really trying to talk about here. Let's focus in on, we've got an issue, we want to solve it. And the only way we can solve problems is if we understand them more deeply.
Correct.
And at the same time, going down that rabbit hole, people sometimes, they don't know what they don't know, but they keep going.
Right.
And I think that comes down to kind of culture. And I'm always talking about people and process first, right? So if there was no CMMS in, let's say, a plant environment, you could literally walk in there and do a proper assessment over a series of days through observation, which those leaders and supervisors and decision makers and money spenders could do, but don't for one reason or another.
Mm-hmm.
You could, without a system, probably dial in a process or a set of processes, provided the culture and the basic elements of kind of fundamental excellence in maintenance and reliability already in place. So then when the technology comes in, so now I'm kind of fast forwarding, we've done some of those steps. There's going to be a new set of kind of challenges and resistance when it comes to the true adoption. Have you leveraged any strategies when new technology is brought in, like a CMMS, that gives a better likelihood of success when you are the one actually bringing it to the org?
I think there's two things, right? I think the first one is having the right people on the team, so that everybody is involved and knows and understands what's going on and what's upcoming. And number two, it's actually just trying to prevent, a great culture change, and to give them the understanding of why we're doing this and what benefits it's going to have to them. You and I know it's hard to change somebody that's been doing something for a very long time, and it's always worked for them, to all of a sudden do a complete 180 and have them change and do something different in a different way. And it's very important that you have that culture and that change management plan in place of how you're going to roll this out correctly, not hurriedly, but then giving them the benefits and understandings of why we need to do this and how it's going to improve the organization. I think that's really important. Rather than just saying, hey, Greg, you got to do this. It's going to be live next week and your training's coming up and this is what we're going to do, So
yeah, you'd probably add into that, this is what we're going to be doing, but let me make sure you understand why. I also want to know, what are your concerns? What are areas that you see that might present like a barrier to entry on being able to adopt our new strategy, so that everybody's on the same page? I think that happens a lot. But the way you were describing it, something was kind of screaming out in my head, this thing we all talk about. We've been saying it for years. We're going to say it forever. We've always done it that way.
Right.
And I think on one hand, it's a terrible perspective, it's a terrible philosophy, but it's a real thing. And instead of looking at it as like the elephant in the room, another way to look at it is it creates a really great opportunity for, just in that statement alone, if you can find and confirm that that exists in an organization in any way, shape, or form, or on a team within an organization in any way, shape, or form, that's a straight place where working on culture and getting buy-in and getting everybody kind of moving in the same directions for the same similar reasons, that's a big opportunity for some quick improvement, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A big opportunity. And I think, like we've talked about before in the past, and you've had people on your show talk about, it's getting up front and saying, hey, what would you like to see in this system? What do you think there's some things that missing that we need to add to it? Getting that buy-in and input from those technicians or whoever's impacted by the change. That way you're leveraging their buy-ins and you're also getting their feedback so they feel valued, that, hey, they're taking my feedback and then maybe I'll get to see some of this rolled into the CMS system that we're going to select versus somebody just telling me, hey, this is what you're going to use. I think that's important too.
Yeah, and now I'm thinking about that, and you're in the middle of a project. I'm kind of making it up as we go here, obviously, and I think about this concept of doing like a pilot within the organization, like a small area. I've heard some concepts of certain number of assets, certain number of work orders, but I think with what you guys do, especially at Eruditio, you're you seem to be very big proponents of, all right, we're going to do all this, but we're going to do it in this kind of micro version of it first, and that somehow creates these opportunities to kind of fail fix, and then when you see it start to work, now all right, we've kind of got it, now we can kind of go bigger. How does that really unfold for you
That's right.
when you've been involved in it? Is it a mistake for people to think that's a quick process?
No, it's not a mistake to think it's a quick process. Like you just said, you want to find a pilot area that can be successful. Because if you want to roll this out to the other parts of the organization or that facility, if you fail the first time, well, guess what? It's going to be hard to succeed in the other places, right? So you find a good, valuable area that would be great for a pilot area that will give you the results of all the implementation and stuff that you've put in the hard work to see. And you want to take that success along with the failures and opportunities that you just mentioned so that you can you can correct those issues and mistakes and then move it forward along the other parts of the organization for the next areas, right? But I call it the guinea pig, right? What's a great place to have that guinea pig? That's the guinea pig. Let's make sure let's test it. It's like a hypothesis, right? Let's test it. If it doesn't work, let's understand why. Then you make those changes, and then you be successful. Later on down the road. You
So
know,
it can be quick, but we shouldn't think of doing it quickly as a way to cut corners.
that's correct. That's correct.
Do
That's
you
correct.
see that a lot in the different engagements you participate in, or past work lives, where people have not only done shortcuts, cut some corners, however you like to look at that, and they actually knew it and just kept going? Have you ever seen those kind of things
Well,
unfold?
I have absolutely. And what they're trying to do a lot of times to me is they're trying to hide it and hope that it's successful, right? Eventually, it's going to come back and bite you. Eventually will. You may not see it in the front end, but it's going to come back and get you because it's not sustainable. That quick cost cutting is not sustainable, right? And we talk about all the fluid of our industry right now and the layoffs and things that are happening. You can never cost cut your way to profitability and be success. It's going to come back to bite you eventually. But you just look at today how many of these people have been, job relocations and layoffs, and the amount. If you just look on LinkedIn, Greg, the amount of experience out there that's available right now is truly amazing. And you just think about some of these organizations have cut their entire reliability program, predictive maintenance programs, in an effort to cut costs. And I don't understand their backgrounds or what they're doing, but just the choices that they've made to just, take out those organizations, sections of that organization, is just mind boggling to me because there is so much talent out there that's all of a sudden gone. So now you've got to start back over. If you're the organization 5 years down the road and somebody wants to come back in, hey, we need a new CMS system, or we want to start a reliability program. Now you got to start back at zero again because you just lost all that experience. And I bet you right now in some of those plants and places, they're probably having trouble running right now. Production's probably not going as smooth as it should be going or used to be going.
I am hearing about that, and I think this is kind of a thing that repeats itself over and over and over again, and it's not like we're gonna do something that makes it not happen again.
Right.
However, it's it's kind of scary
Mhm.
that these cuts get made when, if they would go a little bit beyond the surface, a little bit beyond the balance sheet, I think I'm making some assumptions here, to understand what the true impact, the true negative impact could be to the organization versus what the actual positive impact is. Because I think from a maintenance perspective, a reliability perspective, of course, there's all these areas of upside that there's some willful resistance to see it or understand it that way. And that's the part that I think we find to be baffling, because if you properly study what you have first before you make a change to it, and then you confirm that a change is necessary because it in and of itself, right, a cut on the bound, a cut in costs or whatever, we've got it tied to, say, a root cause within
Mhm.
organizational movement and functioning, and now we can see there's a justification for the change that we're about to make. It seems like people are just moving too quick. They see red instead of taking that step back. Is that kind of a decent way to explain it?
It is. Exactly. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. I think it's just, I mean, it's quick to me how fast you can just take out a lot of these people in an organization, not over 1 week or 1 month or 2 months. Now, again, I don't know how long this has been planned, but to have that, kind of like in the NFL, you have that, bloody Monday after the last Sunday of the NFL season, coaches lose their jobs. It's like that following Monday or the next day, instantly 1,000 folks are gone. And it's like wham. And I was talking to a gentleman today. I think of the people that are left in that organization, the young engineers, the mentors that just left, those people that were helping those young people that are brand new to the organization, help them mentor along with a process or a procedure in a department. Now it's automatically on them overnight or within a week. Now they've really got to step up and they've got to try to be successful. And what they thought they were learning from their mentor is now gone. And to me, you got to grow up pretty quick. Grow up
Yeah,
pretty
and
quick.
I think some can really rise to that challenge and that occasion, but I also think there's a lot that try to do that and they don't even know that some of what they're doing has blind spots or some critical things being overlooked that will then show up later, and then the org's going to put it on them.
Right.
And these are young guys and gals that are coming up, and they've learned some and they could kind of pull it off, but when those mentors are gone, the info that's in their head, whatever the case may be, and then if you try to pull them back, they might say, well, no, you did me wrong, I can't help you out unless you write me a big fat check. It's wild. And the CMMS fits into this because some of, not all of it, it's not a fail safe, but it's a little bit of a backup plan. If the CMMS has been leveraged properly, things have been documented, right? If it didn't get written down, it didn't happen, all those good things that we all talk about, we know and we understand, you would at least have something to go on as far as, when this happens to this particular machine, this is what was done in the past by, you know, Joe maintenance veteran, like forgotten more than we're ever going to know, that just
That's right.
left or got fired, or Jill maintenance that has these things documented about how she's handling a particular, let's say, trigger event that causes line downtime that everybody thinks needs a massive repair. She's found a workaround that she's documented. Then there's things to lean on. So that's another good reason or case for having a CMMS. But a lot of people, they think that's pie in the sky and it just sounds good, but it's a real thing, right?
Oh, it is a real thing. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times we go into facilities that don't have any of the historical data in there, right? I mean, they've got completed work orders, but it could be just fixed, repaired, those kind of things, right? That's
Yeah.
that's all it says. It doesn't tell you exactly what I did, or I reset the HMI, or I did this to the PLC. It'll just say repaired or fixed. And like you just said, those people leaving, all that tribal knowledge is just gone overnight within a week. I know as well as you do, when we know people were retiring at my old company, you were trying to get every ounce out of their noggin as you could in that 2 months, 4 months, however, it was before the retirement date, because when that 30-year veteran left, there was a lot of stuff that left with him. So you were trying to pick his brain, understand all those nuances, and try to get as much as you could. Hire the new person that's replacing them, pair them up with them, for that mentorship. You're trying to get everything you could before they left, because when they walked out of the door, they weren't coming back. You know,
Yeah. Th-
and it's
This
even like
this
a CMS system, Greg. There's experts in the plant, and typically, there's one or two true SME experts on that CMMS. There's a lot of folks that know how to open a work order, close a work order, but you know as well as I do, there's only two or three in that plant that really truly know that CMMS system like the back of their hand, and can tell you all about this or find this, or yes, this is located here, and it could be because of a role or procedure or policy or something like that. But when those people leave too, it's very tough, to find that expert again that can train the next group coming through.
Yeah, and this is all like right in the wheelhouse of why I like to always talk about all these things, because we can connect them all. A lot of us understand it, but we need to continually hear it. So when we have a situation just like you described, that's when there's a high risk of someone thinking, "Oh, this CMMS we have, it's a waste of money. It doesn't even work, blah, blah, blah." When in fact, it actually does. You just lost your in-house champions and subject matter experts that know how to facilitate that. And there wasn't any succession planning. I think organizations would serve themselves well. The orgs that use these platforms have these systems, these reliability programs, and the providers, the CMMS providers, the EAM providers. There should be a very intentional build out of how and why we rolled it out this way. Here's exactly how we use it, in the form of a library that goes into their learning management system or something like that. And I know it's a lot of work. And I know there's companies out there that would say, "Hey, we'll come in and do it all for you." My only hesitation there is they need to know exactly what that story was. And I think everybody could just do a better job. There's kind of a thing that you'll find out there. I can't remember who most recently. I think it was Eric Houpier over at um I just forgot the company name. Long day, but
Yeah, right.
you can look him up. Um, Reliability is everyone's responsibility. And what would you say to that? Like if somebody out there, just one person, doesn't understand that concept, how would you explain reliability is everyone's responsibility?
Well, I think it starts with safety. You've got to have a safe plant and a safe organization before you can even be reliable. you know and that goes to your operator, that goes to your technician, that goes to the hiring manager that's hiring the right people, that are going to hire folks that want to do the right thing and do the right work and complete the right job. It goes to the receiving dock, it goes to the MRO people that want to pull you a quality part that is going to be reliable when it's installed. It goes back to the supplier that's going to supply you that part. It goes back to the engineer selecting the right things. There are so many facets in the facility that make up a reliable organization. And all it takes is for one of those facets to not do their job, and everything breaks. You know, we were discussing that today with operators. They've got A operators and D operators, and they just move people around. And I know if I put the A operator there, this run's going to line to run. This line is going to run to a great OEE, and they didn't want to get in trouble, so they put the ace over there, right? Then on the night shift, they may use the C that they're trying to, train, but it's not very reliable. So you got to build that training and that process up, So everybody in that facility is responsible for reliability. It's not just one person. It's a lot of people think it's the maintenance technician. We've got great equipment, but the maintenance technician, they got to fix it to be reliable. And as well as I know, you can only bring something back to as best as it was started when it was produced. You can't make it any better unless you re-engineer it. That's the definition of reliability. I want to bring it back to its original state. Can't make it any better unless you re-engineer it. I want to take it back. So it starts. All those people have to be a part of it to be a reliable organization. You know.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating topic that, even if I'm trying to explain to somebody like, "What do you do?" I say, "Well, I talk about this," but it turns out in the reliability world, I get a lot of people that want to come on and talk about this. And I myself am not a reliability expert. I'm not a reliability practitioner, but I really try to understand and see where this applies and how it it really brings value, and it's kind of the right way. Not for everybody, not for everybody. Some orgs shouldn't strive for that ultimate reliability. They might have a different particular set of reasons behind that. I can't articulate it any better than that. But when we talk about all these things, there's kind of a theme throughout. So if reliability is everybody's responsibility, right? I almost feel like there's still coming back to that blame game, a little bit too much of that, or the idea that everybody thinks somebody else is going to take care of it and handle it. And it just doesn't work like that. You have to be cohesive in your movements and kind of put it as as a theme, as a mission that is what I'm about to do, is what I'm about to say, is what I'm about to react to with a person, a situation, a piece of equipment. Does that contribute to reliability? Something like an exercise like that could actually keep people moving in the right direction. The blame game part I was thinking of was how operators always blame maintenance, and maintenance tends to blame operators. And what we really want is to educate one another on what we really do and how it really works. Because an operator that runs the wrong speed settings causes a problem, and he blames maintenance. And maintenance is like, hey, I can help with this, but I mean, don't come at me like that. How often do you see that still to this day?
It's still a game. It's a battle, right? I think operators can be your best friend. They're at the equipment all day, every day. They hear things that people don't hear. They see things that people don't see. They understand the intricacies of that machine. A lot of them know how to run it, and sometimes they're better than technicians because a technician's only coming over there to do a PM or a corrective PM or something like that. They're not there all the time. So you get those good operators that truly care about what they're doing and the asset that they're running. They can be your best friend because they can tell you things beforehand that are about to happen that you can plan and schedule before the actual equipment fails. Now,
Yeah.
and I get it. There are operators out there that aren't near as good, and it causes frustrations for the technician because they don't want to learn, and they'll call somebody over there just to reset it. Right. So I've seen technician frustrations that walk all the way across the plant, and all they did was hit a red button because somebody else didn't want to do something too. So those issues are real every single day. And that's where that education piece, like you talked about, the cohesiveness comes together is the operator and technician can work hand in hand because I think they can be best friends and minimize the downtime on that machine. But like you said, it is a big battle depending on what organization you go to. You
Yeah.
know, and I'm a big fan of operator care. I really am. Lubricating things, cleaning things, tightening things, whatever they can help. Within that organization allows, they can help that equipment because they just know that stuff like the back of their hand. A lot of the times with the operators I've met, you know.
Yeah, and I think for some of them, and it's a bit of a guess, but I think for some of them, if there's a way for them to kind of realize they could learn a couple of little things that make them better, not because of their just for everything to keep moving forward. I think they want to learn at least a little bit of the maintenance perspective and how
Sure.
they can participate in the whole thing. And then I think maintenance as well. Like I love maintenance people because whether it's good, bad, ugly, I mean, they're just trying to get it done and get it done right. Most of them, if they're good, and I think they too probably could benefit from understanding just a touch more about the operator. You don't have to be capable to be an operator, and an operator doesn't have to be capable of being the maintenance technician or even the maintenance leader, anything like that. But if they have a little bit of basis, they start to have a better understanding. And I also don't think they have to sing kumbaya together, but they have to have mutual respect and say, hey, we're all here to do some cool stuff. And I might not like your haircut, but I want us to thrive. I mean, they got to
That's right. That's
do
right.
that.
Operators are typically a position that you get promoted into. And I've seen some organizations take some operators. They only run first and second shift, and I've seen them take operators and form a care team, a PM care team. So on the third shift, they are actually doing PMs on the equipment that they're using. It could be minor lubrication, it could be minor tightening of fasteners and bolts, checking belts and things like that. But they've been trained by the maintenance team to do that on third shift, while the equipment's not running, and that in turn frees up the technicians to get even more work done on the maintenance side.
Yeah.
but it doesn't require a full blown maintenance technician to go do what they're doing. But the PM care team worked very well. And it was just a group of operators that were put in that particular. I think there was 5 in that one team, and it was very successful. What they get accomplished and what they get done while the line wasn't running. You know.
Yeah, I know for me, like certainly as a young buck, when I was working in a couple of environments that were either manufacturing or production, maybe they're cutting these huge like foam that's like so big and then they turn it into all these products. When operations all start to get quiet, I used to like seeing all the cool stuff that was being done to the machines, the
Right.
huge
Yeah. That's
table
fun.
band saws, or I remember being I was the janitor in a facility as a teenager. They'd let me drive the truck without a license on property to move huge bags of trash, and then I would go get these huge chunks of foam. They'd give me the order. I'd go back to that warehouse, put it on a roller, and bring it out. But I would see when they wrapped up ops for the day, they would start breaking down parts of the machines and doing these cleaning exercises, and I was always fascinated by it. And what I realized later, back then, is when I read that book, The Goal, that I've talked about before.
Right. Right.
And I realized that moment, maybe it was 30 minutes worth of stuff that they did, was actually why they could come in the next day, do their inspection on whichever station they were at, or if it was at another place that was doing like aerospace and defense stuff. I was on a deburring station. They'd do those things because that was actually a part of the maintenance process that they could participate in that assured that availability to keep running. And I think the CMMS plays a great role in that as well, but it's always going to come down to the people in the process, the technologies in there, if done right, to really do all this. I just want to thank you for this time. And I think that's a lot for people to chew on. And
Yeah.
we're gonna do this again. Any parting words on something like AI? How real is that, or is it just shiny stuff?
It's very real. We talked about it last night at dinner. How there's one called Notebook LM, and how you can actually put transcripts and things like that, and it creates podcasts and things like that. It's just amazing, the technology now. It's amazing how you can put things in there and it just spits stuff right back. And it's still learning with anything. The processes are pretty good, because it's got to learn from those things. But it is truly becoming a game changer in a lot of things. I've been
Yeah.
very impressed by it. I don't use it a whole lot yet. I've used it a lot more in the last 2 or 3 months than I have. But it just seems like every week, Greg, there's a new AI that's out. That's just another version that's even better and does even more crazier, scarier things. But it's fascinating, and I think people will continue to learn how to use it. I think for an organization, I think it's even more important for us as consultants and maintenance reliability pioneers and people that help organizations. The one thing it can't replace is the people piece, right? Is it can't replace the people piece. And that's where it's very important for us, because you can write work procedures and stuff if you want to, basically using AI, but it still takes like people like myself and others to go into a plant to help them mentor, coach, train. AI is not going to be able to replace that. I was,
Yeah.
you know, so to me, that's very important. I tried to put a picture of myself, and I said, I think last night, picture of William Sloan, and it won't do it for privacy reasons and stuff like that. There's still those limits and things like that. Will they get them in the future? Maybe, but people have to be careful. To me, it can't replace those relationships and those people pieces. That to me, like you said, reliability belongs to everybody. Everybody's responsibility. I think that's very important to understand too. So
Yeah. And I'm I ask these questions, and whether I have an opinion or not, I mean, I'm watching. I think some of it's going to wash out. I think what's really important is that however you're leveraging AI, say for example in a CMMS or in some of these other aspects of your factories, your plants, out on the oil rigs, all of that, definitely useful for the data, but it has to be taught right, and you can't let it, in a sense, run amok. And I'm not talking like Cyberdyne systems take over. I'm saying all of these things you and I have talked about today, we've talked about in the past, and whatever we talk about in the future, when we bring in these best practices, we bring in a group like Eruditio or any of the other great people we know throughout this industry, like Sean says, we're all brethren in one way or another, and we're trying to do good stuff for people. That too requires maintenance. You have to check on your stuff. There are no set it and forget it solutions. That's not a thing. And that's the thing everybody, I think, needs to quit sleeping on and just make it a part of it. I'm not saying it's easy, but if that discipline can be developed, you'll see it in the Toyotas and the other, Coca-Colas and whatnot that are really doing well. And you see it permeate throughout the organization. So I think that's the potentiality there.
You made a great point with set it and forget it, because a lot of this AI stuff, you have to go back and verify what it spit out. You can't just take for granted that's what it is, because it's not always right. And if you don't read it and verify it and correct it, you'll embarrass yourself in front of people.
Absolutely.
You're not authentic,
the false positives where you're running out to do, let's say, a PM because you've gotten an indicator that you're heading towards a potential failure, right? Whether it's a minor failure or a catastrophic one, and then you go get ready to do that and find out that it wasn't a problem at all. You have to kind of babysit it, and that's just always a thing. Anytime we're not checking on something, I think no news is bad news a lot of the time. Right. And that's kind of my point. Man, William Sloan, Eruditio, thank you once again for being here with me on CMMS Radio.
Hey, Greg, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it again.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.